There's a scam running through your life right now. Not the kind advertised with flashing lights or promised riches, not the obvious manipulation you can spot from a mile away. This one is quieter, deeper. It's been operating since before you learned to speak, woven into the fabric of how you see yourself and the world around you. And the most disturbing part? You've been its willing participant, even its defender, without ever realizing what you've agreed to. Ibn Arabi, the 13th century Sufi mystic and philosopher, understood this scam with a clarity that still cuts through centuries of human delusion. He called it something different, of course. He spoke of veils, of separation, of the nafs, that restless self that believes it stands alone in a hostile universe. But make no mistake, he was describing the greatest con ever perpetrated on human consciousness. And until you understand how it works, you'll keep paying the price. The scam begins with a simple premise that feels so natural, so self-evident, that questioning it seems absurd. It tells you that you are separate, that there is you, and then there is everything else. Your skin is a boundary. Your thoughts are yours alone. Your emotions belong to you. The world exists outside, independent, indifferent. You are an isolated island of consciousness, floating in an ocean of otherness. This premise becomes the foundation of everything. Every fear you've ever felt, every desire that's consumed you, every moment of loneliness that's carved out a hollow space in your chest, they all stem from this one belief, that you are fundamentally alone, fundamentally separate, fundamentally incomplete. Ibn Arabi saw through this illusion with the precision of a surgeon cutting through diseased tissue. He recognized that separation is not a fact of existence, but a condition of perception, a veil, as he called it, and veils, by their nature, obscure. They hide what is actually there behind what appears to be there. The scam works because it replaces reality with representation, then convinces you the representation is all there is. Consider how you experience your own identity. Right now, if someone asks who you are, you probably reach for labels. Your name, your occupation, your relationships, your history, your preferences and aversions. You construct an elaborate story about this entity called you, and then you spend tremendous energy maintaining that story, defending it, promoting it, protecting it from threats. But who is doing the constructing? Who is maintaining the story? Ibn Arabi would point you toward this question like a finger pointing at the moon. The one constructing the story cannot be the story itself. The observer cannot be the observed. Yet you've collapsed these two into one, creating a false unity that masquerades as your identity. This false unity is the product of the scam. It's what keeps you trapped in patterns of behavior that no longer serve you, if they ever did. You defend positions you don't truly believe because that's who you are. You resist change because it threatens your self-concept. You judge others because their existence challenges the fragile narrative you've built about yourself. The nafs, that acquisitive, anxious self, is both the victim and the perpetrator of this scam. It believes itself to be under constant threat because it has identified with the temporary, the changeable, the illusory. And so it lives in a state of perpetual grasping and rejecting, grasping at what it thinks will complete it, rejecting what it thinks will diminish it, never realizing that completion and diminishment are both impossible for what you truly are. Ibn Arabi spoke of the perfect human, the insan al-kamil, not as some distant saint or prophet, but as a state of consciousness available to anyone willing to see through the scam. The perfect human is not perfect in the sense of flawless. Rather, they are perfect in the sense of complete, whole, integrated. They have seen through the illusion of separation and recognized their fundamental unity with all existence. This recognition doesn't come through belief. You can't think your way into it. You can't adopt it as a philosophy and expect transformation. The scam operates at a level deeper than thought, in the very structure of how you perceive. To see through it requires a shift not in what you think, but in how you see. Every mystical tradition has pointed toward this shift in its own language. The Buddhists speak of emptiness, the Hindus of Brahman, the Christians of dying to self. Ibn Arabi used the language of Islamic mysticism, but his insight transcends any single tradition. He was describing a fundamental truth about consciousness itself. that what you take to be your separate self is actually a localized expression of a much vaster reality. The implications of this are staggering. If you are not the isolated fragment you've always believed yourself to be, then the entire edifice of your fears and desires begins to crumble. What is there to protect if there is no separate self to be threatened? What is there to acquire if there is no lack to be filled? What is there to prove if there is no inadequate identity that needs validation? But here's where the scam reveals its true sophistication. It doesn't just operate on the level of your conscious beliefs. It has hijacked your entire perceptual apparatus. Your very attention has been trained to reinforce the illusion of separation. You look out at the world and you see objects, distinct and separate from each other. You experience your thoughts as yours, different from others' thoughts. You feel your emotions as internal experiences, cut off from the emotions of those around you. This way of perceiving feels so natural, so obvious, that suggesting it might be constructed seems ridiculous. But consider this: a newborn infant doesn't perceive separation. The boundary between self and other hasn't yet been established. That boundary is learned, reinforced through countless repetitions, until it becomes automatic, invisible, seemingly inherent to reality itself. Ibn Arabi described levels of self-awareness, stages through which consciousness moves as it awakens from the scam. At the lowest level is the animal self, concerned only with survival and pleasure. Above this is the blaming self, which has developed some moral awareness, but exists in constant internal conflict. Higher still is the inspired self, which has glimpses of something beyond the ordinary. And ultimately there is the tranquil self, which has seen through the illusion and rests in awareness of its true nature. These aren't stages you graduate through and leave behind. They're more like frequencies you can tune into. Right now you're probably operating on all of them simultaneously, shifting between them depending on circumstances. The scam wants you to identify with the lower frequencies and believe they represent the totality of what you are. Your suffering is the price you pay for buying into the scam. Not the suffering that comes from pain, loss, or difficulty. Those are inevitable parts of physical existence. The suffering that comes from resistance, from wanting things to be other than they are, from believing that your worth depends on external circumstances, from feeling that life is happening to you rather than through you. This suffering is optional. It exists only because you've accepted the premise of separation. Once you see that premise for what it is, a construction, not a fact, the suffering begins to dissolve. Not because your circumstances change, but because your relationship to your circumstances changes. You stop fighting reality and start flowing with it. Not in passive resignation, but in active participation. Ibn Arabi used the metaphor of a mirror to explain this. Reality is like a perfect mirror, reflecting back what is presented to it without distortion. Your separate self, the product of the scam, is like dust on the mirror. It doesn't change what the mirror is, but it obscures what the mirror reflects. The work of awakening is not to become something different, but to polish the mirror, to clear away the dust, to let the reflection be what it always was. This metaphor cuts deeper than it might initially seem. If you are the mirror, and what you take to be your separate self is merely dust, then your true nature has never been damaged or diminished. The scam hasn't actually changed what you are. It's only hidden it from your view. You've been living as though you were the dust while the mirror, clear, perfect, complete, was there all along. The practical implications of this realization are profound. Most people spend their lives trying to improve the dust. They work on their personality, their achievements, their relationships, believing that if they can just get the dust arranged correctly, they'll be happy. But dust is dust. No matter how you arrange it, it still obscures the mirror. This doesn't mean self-improvement is worthless. It means the motivation behind it matters. Are you trying to fix a fundamentally broken self, or are you expressing and clarifying what is already whole? The former is exhausting and ultimately futile. The latter is creative and liberating. The scam operates through what Ibn Arabi called forgetfulness. You forget what you are and identify with what you appear to be. This forgetting is not an intellectual mistake. It's a condition of perception that colors every experience. You literally see yourself as separate because you've forgotten how to see otherwise. Language itself is complicit in this forgetting. The structure of subject-verb-object reinforces the illusion of separation. I see the tree. In that simple sentence, you've divided reality into three pieces: a seer, an act of seeing, and a thing seen. But in the actual moment of seeing, where are these divisions? Can you find the boundary between your seeing and what is seen? Or is there only the seamless event of seeing tree, artificially divided by language into separate components? Every time you use the word I, you're reinforcing the scam, not because there's something wrong with the word, but because of what you believe the word refers to. You think it points to a fixed, separate entity that persists through time. But examine your actual experience. What is this I that was you 10 years ago, 5 years ago, yesterday, this morning? Where does it reside? What is it made of? Can you find it when you look? Ibn Arabi wasn't asking these questions to be abstract or philosophical. He was pointing toward a living recognition that transforms how you experience everything. When you truly can't find the separate self you've been defending all your life, something radical happens. Not a nihilistic emptiness, but a spaciousness that contains all experience without being threatened by any of it. This spaciousness is what you actually are. It's not an achievement or a state you have to attain. It's the constant background of all your experience, the awareness within which all thoughts, emotions, and sensations arise. The scam has convinced you to focus on the contents of awareness, the thoughts, emotions, sensations, and ignore awareness itself. It's as if you've been watching a movie your entire life, so absorbed in the story that you forgot about the screen. The characters in the movie suffer and celebrate, love and hate, win and lose. You identify with one particular character and feel whatever they feel, but none of it touches the screen. The screen doesn't become sad during sad scenes or happy during happy scenes. It simply allows the movie to appear. You are the screen, not the character. But the scam has you so convinced you're the character that you've forgotten the screen exists. And because you've forgotten the screen, you believe that what happens to the character is happening to you. You suffer the character's suffering. You fear the character's death. You defend the character's dignity and worth. Ibn Arabi saw clearly that the character is not an illusion in the sense of being unreal. The character exists, plays their role, has their experiences. The illusion is identifying yourself as the character while forgetting you're the screen. This identification is the source of all psychological suffering. When you remember you're the screen, the character's experiences don't stop happening. Pain still hurts, loss still creates sadness, but they no longer threaten your fundamental being because your fundamental being isn't the character. You are what allows the character to exist, what remains when the character's story ends, what was there before the character's story began. This might sound detached or cold, as though Ibn Arabi was advocating for some kind of emotional numbness. But the reality is the opposite. When you stop defending the character, you become free to experience life more fully. You're no longer filtering every experience through the question, how does this affect me? Instead, you meet each moment fresh, without the heavy overlay of self-interest. The scam wants you to believe that your self-interest is the source of your vitality, your motivation, your engagement with life. Remove self-interest, the scam whispers, and you'll become passive, purposeless, disconnected. But anyone who has actually seen through the scam discovers the opposite. When the burden of defending a separate self falls away, energy that was tied up in self-protection becomes available for genuine connection, creativity, compassion. Ibn Arabi lived this understanding. His writings are not the work of someone detached from life, but someone deeply engaged with it. He wrote poetry, philosophy, theology. He taught students, traveled widely, loved deeply. But he did all of this from a place beyond the scam, beyond the anxious grasping of the nafs. His actions flowed not from lack, but from fullness, not from fear, but from freedom. The path from where you are to where Ibn Arabi was pointing is not a journey through space or time. You don't need to go anywhere or become anything other than what you are. The journey is a shift in recognition, a seeing through what you've taken to be true, and this seeing cannot be forced or manufactured. It happens through grace, through readiness, through a mysterious combination of effort and surrender. But there are practices that create conditions for this seeing. Not practices that will make you enlightened, but practices that polish the mirror, that clear away the dust. Meditation is one such practice, not as a means of achieving a special state, but as a way of observing the mechanisms of mind without being captured by them. You watch thoughts arise and fall away. You notice how emotions color perception. You see how attention creates experience. In this watching, something subtle begins to happen. The identification with thoughts and emotions loosens. You start to recognize yourself as the space in which these things occur, rather than the things themselves. This recognition isn't dramatic. It's more like a gentle settling, a relaxation of something you didn't know was tense. Another practice is self-inquiry, asking the question Ibn Arabi would have you ask, who am I? Not as an intellectual exercise, but as a genuine investigation into the nature of your experience. When you feel anxiety, ask, who is anxious? When you feel pride, ask, who is proud? Don't accept easy answers. Look at your actual experience. Try to find the one who is experiencing. The more deeply you look, the more the solid sense of self begins to reveal its constructed nature. You might feel fear arise at this point. The scam has taught you that your sense of self is your lifeline, your anchor in reality. Losing it feels like losing everything. But what's actually happening is that you're losing the illusion and gaining reality. The fear is the scam's last defense, its final attempt to keep you trapped. Ibn Arabi emphasized the importance of a teacher, a guide who has already walked this path. The scam is too sophisticated, too deeply embedded for most people to see through it alone. A teacher can point out the mechanisms of self-deception as they operate in real time. They can reflect back to you what you can't see yourself. But even a teacher can't do the seeing for you. They can only point, you have to look. The modern world makes seeing through the scam both more difficult and more necessary. You're bombarded with messages designed to reinforce separation and inadequacy. Advertising tells you you're incomplete without their product. Social media turns your life into a performance, your identity into a brand. Political discourse divides humanity into us and them, friend and enemy. Every external force conspires to keep you trapped in the illusion of being a separate, insufficient self that needs to acquire, defend, and prove itself. Yet this same modern world has made teachings like Ibn Arabi's more accessible than ever. You don't need to travel to a distant monastery or find a reclusive sage. The wisdom is available if you're willing to look past the noise and truly listen. The question is whether you have the courage to question what you've always taken to be true. Because that's what it takes. Courage. Not the courage to face external threats, but the courage to face the possibility that everything you've believed about yourself might be based on a fundamental misunderstanding. That the solid ground you've built your life on might be quicksand. That the identity you've defended so fiercely might be a ghost. But on the other side of this courage is freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want. That's just another form of the scam, suggesting that freedom is about the character having more options. Real freedom is the recognition that you are not the character at all. You are the unchanging awareness within which all characters, all stories, all experiences arise and pass away. This freedom doesn't mean you stop being a person in the world. You still have a name, a body, a history, relationships, responsibilities. But you hold all of it lightly, playfully, without the desperate seriousness that comes from believing your worth depends on it. You act, but your actions flow from presence rather than fear. You relate to others, but without the neediness that comes from trying to fill an imaginary lack. Ibn Arabi described this state as fana and baqa, annihilation and subsistence. The false self must be annihilated, not in the sense of being destroyed, but in the sense of being seen through, recognized as the construction it is. And in that annihilation, what subsists is your true nature, which was never actually absent, but only hidden beneath the scam. The word subsistence is important here. It's not that you become nothing. You become everything, or rather you recognize that you always were everything. The boundaries that separated you from the world dissolve. Not in some mystical merger where distinctions disappear, but in a recognition that distinctions exist within a fundamental unity. The wave is distinct from the ocean, yet it is nothing but ocean. You are distinct from existence, yet you are nothing but existence. This recognition changes how you relate to suffering. Your own suffering is no longer a problem that needs to be solved, but an experience that arises and passes within awareness. You can feel pain without being destroyed by it. You can experience loss without being diminished by it. And the suffering of others touches you more deeply because you're no longer protecting a separate self from their pain. Their suffering is your suffering, not because you're merging identities, but because the separation between you was always illusory. Compassion in this context is not an emotion you cultivate, but a natural expression of seeing clearly. When the boundaries between self and other are recognized as artificial, caring for others becomes as natural as caring for your own hand. You don't have to try to be compassionate any more than you have to try to pull your hand away from a flame. The scam has convinced you that compassion requires sacrifice, that caring for others means diminishing yourself. But this is only true if you believe in the fundamental separation between self and other. Once you see through that separation, the distinction between self-interest and altruism collapses. Acting for the benefit of others is acting for your own benefit because others and self are arbitrary divisions within a seamless whole. Ibn Arabi wasn't naive about human behavior. He recognized that people act selfishly, cruelly, destructively. But he understood these actions as arising from the scam, from the desperate attempts of a confused nafs to secure itself in a world it perceives as threatening. When you truly see that you are not separate, not threatened, not lacking, the motivation for selfish behavior simply evaporates. This doesn't mean you become passive or allow harm, but your response to harm comes from a different place. Not from defending your territory or proving your worth, but from a natural responsiveness to what the situation requires. Sometimes that means strong action, sometimes it means gentle patience, but it's never reactionary, never driven by the wounded ego defending itself. The question arises, if this understanding is so transformative, why doesn't everyone have it? Why does the scam continue to operate so effectively? Ibn Arabi would point to several factors. First, there's the sheer momentum of conditioning. You've been trained since birth to perceive yourself as separate. Every institution, every relationship, every transaction reinforces this perception. Questioning it means swimming against a massive current. Second, there's the fear of what lies beyond the scam. The separate self, for all its suffering, feels safe in its familiarity. It's the devil you know. The prospect of losing your identity, even if it's a false identity, triggers primal survival responses. Your entire psychological structure is organized around protecting this identity. Dismantling it feels like death. And in a sense, it is death. Not physical death, but the death of everything you've taken yourself to be. The mystics call it ego death, and the term is apt. But what they often don't emphasize enough is that this death is also a birth. What dies is the false. What is born is recognition of what was always true. Third, there's the problem of language and communication. How do you speak about what lies beyond separation while using a language structured by separation? Every word creates division. Every concept reinforces duality. Ibn Arabi struggled with this, as have all mystics. They resort to paradox, poetry, metaphor, anything to point beyond the limitations of conventional speech. But the limitations of language don't make the recognition impossible. They just mean you can't think your way there. The understanding that sees through the scam is not intellectual, though intellect can point toward it. It's direct, immediate, experiential. You don't understand it the way you understand a mathematical formula. You recognize it the way you recognize your own face in a mirror. This recognition often comes in moments of crisis or grace, when the structures of the separate self are temporarily disrupted, through meditation, through suffering, through love, through beauty, through psychedelic experience. The illusion can crack open. In that crack, reality shines through. It's brief, often fleeting, but it's enough to change everything. Because once you've seen through the scam, even for a moment, you can never fully believe in it again. The challenge is making that momentary recognition stable. The scam reasserts itself. The dust settles back on the mirror. The familiar sense of being a separate self returns, but it's different now. There's a knowing underneath, a memory of what you saw, a faint echo of recognition that never quite fades. Ibn Arabi taught that this oscillation between recognition and forgetting is natural, part of the process. You shouldn't expect some permanent state of enlightenment that never wavers. Instead, you cultivate the ability to return to recognition more quickly, more frequently, more effortlessly. Each time you see through the scam, the seeing becomes clearer. Each time the illusion reasserts itself, you recognize it faster. This is the work of a lifetime, not because it takes years to accomplish, but because it unfolds within the context of a life. You have to live, to engage, to stumble, to recover. The recognition that sees through the scam doesn't remove you from the messiness of human existence. It allows you to move through that messiness with greater freedom, wisdom, and grace. And here's the ultimate paradox that Ibn Arabi understood so clearly. The one seeking freedom is the one who creates bondage. As long as you think there's a separate self that needs to see through the scam, you're perpetuating the scam. The seeking itself reinforces the separation. The spiritual journey is a trap if you believe it's about you getting somewhere. Yet Ibn Arabi didn't counsel giving up the journey. Instead, he taught seeing through the journey while continuing to walk the path. You seek, but you recognize that what you're seeking is what's doing the seeking. You practice, but you know that practice doesn't create what you are, only reveals it. You make effort, but you hold effort lightly, without attachment to results. This paradoxical approach frustrates the mind that wants clear instructions, definite methods, guaranteed outcomes. But that mind is part of the scam, the part that wants to control and acquire and achieve. The recognition that sees through the scam doesn't come from that mind. It comes from a deeper place, a place that's already free, already whole, already what you're seeking to become. Ibn Arabi called this the heart, but he didn't mean the physical organ, or even the seat of emotions. He meant the center of awareness, the still point around which all experience revolves. The heart, in this sense, is always open, always clear, always connected to the divine reality that underlies all appearances. The scam has covered the heart with layers of conditioning, belief, identification. The work is not to create an opening, but to remove the coverings. Each time you question a belief about yourself, you remove a layer. Each time you see through a fear, you clear a little more dust from the mirror. Each time you catch yourself defending an identity or attacking a threat to that identity, you have an opportunity to pause and ask, who is defending? What is being threatened? Is any of this actually true? These questions are not meant to be answered intellectually. They're meant to direct your attention to your actual experience, to what's here before the stories and interpretations. And what you find when you look is always surprising. The solid self you expected to find is nowhere to be found. There's just experiencing, happening all by itself, without anyone doing it. This might sound like spiritual nihilism, as though Ibn Arabi was teaching that you don't exist. But that's not it at all. You exist, experience exists, the world exists. What doesn't exist is the separate, independent, autonomous self that you've taken yourself to be. That's the scam. And seeing through it doesn't negate existence. It reveals existence as it actually is, prior to the distortions of the separate self. The implications of this for how you live are vast. Relationships become simpler when you're not constantly defending or promoting yourself. Work becomes more creative when it's not about proving your worth. Pleasure becomes deeper when you're not grasping at it. Pain becomes more bearable when you're not resisting it. Life, in all its messy complexity, becomes workable in a way it never was when you believed you were separate from it. Ibn Arabi lived in a time of tremendous upheaval, conflict, and uncertainty. The world he inhabited was no less chaotic than ours, yet he maintained an inner stability that came from seeing through the fundamental scam of separation. He could engage fully with his world because he wasn't trying to defend a position within it. He could love deeply because he wasn't afraid of loss. He could teach boldly because he wasn't concerned with reputation. This is what becomes possible when you see through the scam. Not a transcendence that leaves the world behind, but an engagement with the world that's free from the anxiety of the separate self. Not an escape from humanity, but a fuller expression of what humanity can be when it recognizes its true nature. The scam will keep running as long as you believe in it. It will keep creating suffering, confusion, conflict, but the scam has no power over what you actually are. It only has power over the false image you've constructed of yourself. And that image, for all its seeming solidity, is nothing but thought, nothing but habit, nothing but conditioning that can be seen through. Ibn Arabi offers no easy answers, no quick fixes, no spiritual bypasses. He points you back to your own experience and asks you to look closely at what's actually there. Not what you believe is there, not what you've been told is there. What's actually there when you look without the filter of the separate self. What you'll find, if you look deeply enough, is that you are not who you thought you were. You are not the story, not the character, not the separate fragment fighting for survival in a hostile universe. You are the vast awareness within which all stories, all characters, all universes arise and dissolve. You are what remains when everything you thought you were falls away. You are what you've been seeking all along. This recognition doesn't come from accumulating knowledge or perfecting techniques. It comes from a willingness to be completely honest with your experience, to question what you've never questioned, to look at what you've always avoided. It comes from the courage to let go of what you know and rest in the not knowing. It comes from surrendering the need to be someone and discovering what you are when you're no one. Ibn Arabi knew that language fails at this point. Words create more dust on the mirror. But he used words anyway, hoping that somewhere between the words, in the spaces and silences, recognition might dawn. He knew that the scam is convincing precisely because it seems so reasonable, so obvious, so necessary. He knew that seeing through it requires a fundamental reorientation of perception that can't be taught but only pointed toward. And so he pointed, using metaphors and paradoxes, poetry and philosophy, stories and teachings, all of it saying the same thing in different ways. You are not what you think you are. The suffering you experience comes from believing you are separate when you are not. The freedom you seek is not something to be attained, but something to be recognized as already present. The scam that's been quietly steering your life is simply this: the belief that you are a separate self in a world of separate others, lacking something essential, needing to become someone different, required to defend and promote and prove yourself. This belief creates all the unnecessary suffering you experience. Not the pain of existence, but the suffering that comes from resisting what is. Ibn Arabi breaks down this scam not to leave you with nothing, but to show you what remains when the illusion falls away. What remains is not less than what you were, but infinitely more. Not a diminished existence, but existence fully revealed, naked of the distortions that have kept you trapped in a false sense of who and what you are. The question now is whether you're willing to look, whether you have the courage to question what you've never questioned, whether you can let go of the familiar, convincing, comforting story of being a separate self and discover what's here when that story ends. Not in some distant future or altered state, but right now, in this moment, in the immediacy of your actual experience. Because the scam isn't out there somewhere operating on you from a distance. It's here, in the very structure of how you perceive yourself and the world. And that means the seeing through it is also here, available in this moment, if you're willing to look with the honesty and depth that Ibn Arabi asks of you. The ending is also the beginning. The death of the false self is the birth of recognition of what you actually are. And what you actually are has been here all along, patient, present, waiting for you to stop running and simply notice. The mirror was never dirty. The scam just convinced you it was. Now the question is, are you ready to see clearly?